Elena Reyes gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of flickering holoscreens and soft blue lighting, but today it felt more like a cage. Outside the viewport, the stars streaked past in elongated lines, the warp drive pushing them toward the neutral zone where the Galactic Council's blockade waited. She glanced at her crew, just 3 of them now after the last skirmish trimmed their numbers. Lieutenant Kai Voss, her cautious navigator, hunched over his console, fingers dancing across the controls with the precision of someone who'd rather calculate odds than face them. Beside him, Dr. Meera Singh, the ship's wiry xenobiologist, scanned sensor readouts, her dark eyes narrowed in quiet determination. "The Council's transmissions are looping the same warning," Kai said, his voice steady but edged with reluctance. "Any vessel crossing the line forfeits Alliance status. They're not bluffing this time, Captain. Our fuel reserves are at 60%. If we turn back now, we don't turn back." Elena cut him off, not harshly but with the finality of someone who'd stared down worse. She unstrapped and stood pacing to the viewport. The Endeavor was a relic, a mid-sized explorer retrofitted for defense, its hull scarred from patrols along the fringe worlds. Earth had poured everything into the Alliance, tech trades, joint colonies, only for the Council to shatter it over some territorial spat with the Krell Dominion. Now, with supply lines severed, human outposts were starving, and the Endeavor carried the last viable cache of antimatter cells to the stranded colony on Epsilon Eridani. Meera looked up from her station, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Sensors picking up patrol signatures ahead. 3 frigates, Council marked. They're hailing us on open frequency. She tapped a panel, and a synthetic voice filled the bridge, cold and authoritative. "Human vessel Endeavor, this is Enforcer Squadron Delta 7. Reverse course immediately. The Alliance is dissolved by decree of the High Council. Incursion will be met with force." Elena's jaw tightened. Force? As if the Council hadn't already demonstrated that by glassing an Earth supply depot last month. She leaned into the comms. "This is Captain Reyes. We're on a humanitarian run to our own colony. Stand down, we're not here to fight." Static crackled, then the voice returned, unyielding. "Negative. All human traffic prohibited. Power down engines or be disabled." Kai swiveled in his chair, his face paling under the console glow. "Captain, their weapons are hot. We can't outrun them in warp, and our shields won't hold against a full barrage." Elena met his gaze, seeing the flicker of doubt that mirrored her own buried fears. But doubt was a luxury they couldn't afford. "Meera, any weaknesses in their formation? Old Alliance schematics might still apply." Myra's fingers flew across her tablet, pulling up overlay grids. "The lead frigate's running an outdated shield harmonic, pre-Alliance model. If we pulse our emitters at 47 Hz, it could disrupt their cohesion for a few seconds. Enough to slip through, maybe." "Risky," Kai muttered, but he was already plotting the maneuver, his caution giving way to the grind of necessity. Elena nodded, settling back into her chair. "Do it." Kai, plot the breach. Meera, coordinate the pulse. "We're not breaking today, not while there's breath in us." The ship lurched as engines flared, the stars outside twisting sharper. In that moment the bridge felt alive, a fragile bubble of human resolve hurtling toward the unknown. But as the first warning shots lit the void, streaks of plasma grazing their hull, Elena wondered if resolve alone could bend the galaxy to its will. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge consoles a low thrum against the tension coiling in her chest. The holographic display flickered, replaying the Council's broadcast for the 3rd time. Those smug, elongated faces declaring the Alliance severed, humanity's reckless expansion, a threat to the galaxy's fragile peace. She muted it with a sharp jab, the silence heavy. "Captain," Marco said from engineering's comm link, his voice crackling like dry leaves. "Shields are holding at 80%, but if they send that fleet our way, we're sitting ducks. The Odyssey is not built for frontline brawls." She nodded even though he couldn't see it. Marco Ruiz, her chief engineer, always the voice of caution wrapped in sarcasm. They'd served together since the academy, him patching hull breaches while she plotted courses through asteroid fields. "Options, Marco?" We can't outrun them forever. A pause, then the soft clink of tools. Reroute power to the slip drive. It's experimental, could get us to the outer rim in one jump. But if it glitches... He trailed off, the unspoken risk hanging. They'd end up smeared across a light year. Elena glanced at Lieutenant Kira Voss, the navigator, her fingers dancing over her panel. Kira was the steady one, brave without bravado, her eyes sharp behind cropped hair. What's the read on their movements? 3 cruisers inbound 20 minutes, Kira replied, her tone even. They're boxing us in standard council tactic. No mercy for upstarts. The bridge doors hissed open, and Dr. Ellerin stepped in, the alien's iridescent skin shifting hues under the lights. He was the last remnant of the Alliance, a defected Zifiri diplomat with a penchant for blunt truths. They will not negotiate. The Council fears your ingenuity, Captain Vasquez. Humans do not kneel. Elena stood, pacing to the viewport. Star streaked past, indifferent. Then we don't kneel. Marco prepped the slip drive. Kira, plot a course to the Nebula Veil, it's our best shot at cover. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights pulsing. Kira's console sparked. Incoming fire. They've locked on. The ship shuddered, a direct hit rattling the deck. Elena braced against the console, tasting blood from a bitten lip. Evasive maneuvers. Marco's status. Direct hit to the auxiliary generators, he barked back. Slip drives offline, needs a manual bypass. I'm suiting up. No time for fear. Elena slammed the comm, all hands battle stations. We're not going down without a fight. Ellerin moved to her side, his multiple eyes fixed on the sensors. The Council underestimates you. Use that. As another volley rocked the hull, Elena's mind raced. The early plan, slip away quietly, had backfired spectacularly. Now it was adapt or die. She turned to Kira. Arm the countermeasures. Let's make them regret this. The Nebula Veil loomed in the distance, a swirling mass of gas and debris that could hide a fleet or swallow one whole. But first they had to survive the next 10 minutes. Marco's voice cut through again, bypass in progress. Hold on, this is gonna hurt. Elena exhaled, gripping the controls. Grit wasn't just human, it was survival. And they had plenty to spare. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Odysseus engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static from the nebula's interference, but the sensor readouts were clear enough. 3 Krellian interceptors closing fast, their sleek hulls cutting through the gas clouds like predators in tall grass. Her crew, 12 souls strong, handpicked for this rogue mission, watched her with the quiet trust she'd earned over years of scraping by on the fringes of known space. They're hailing us, Captain, Ensign Rao said from comms, his fingers dancing over the console. Rao was the cautious one, always double-checking readings, his brow furrowed now under the dim red emergency lights. Put it through, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The alliance was shattered. The Galactic Council had branded Earth a pariah after the mining dispute on Epsilon Prime, claiming human greed had poisoned a neutral world. But Elena knew better. The Krell had sabotaged the operation to frame them, and now the Council's enforcers were out for blood. The hail crackled open, revealing a Krellian commander with iridescent scales and eyes like polished obsidian. Human vessel Odyssey, you are in violation of Council Edict 47B. Surrender your cargo and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with force. Elena leaned forward, her dark eyes locking onto the alien's unblinking stare. Commander, we're just traders hauling medical supplies to the outer colonies. No violation here, check your own logs. A low hiss escaped the Krellian's vocal slits, translated by the comms as a chuckle. Lies. Your species broke the alliance when you desecrated Epsilon. We know your ship carries the evidence that could expose our involvement. Yield or be destroyed. The channel cut, and alarms blared as the interceptors fired warning shots, lancing plasma bolts that lit the nebula in fiery streaks. Elena's mind raced. The evidence was indeed aboard, a data core stolen from a council outpost, proof of Krellian tampering. But revealing it now would doom them all. Helm, evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Lieutenant Kara Voss, her wiry first officer with a wit sharp as a vibro knife, spun the ship into a tight spiral. The Odyssey groaned under the strain, inertial dampeners whining as they dodged the barrage. Voss grinned over her shoulder. "These fish-faced goons think they can box us in? I've danced through worse in Sims." But the plan was fraying already. Their initial jump through the nebula was meant to shake pursuit, using the ionized clouds to mask their signature. Instead, the Krell had anticipated it, probably from a leak in the human networks. Elena slammed her fist on the armrest. "Rao, boost the shields forward. Engineering, reroute power from life support if you have to. We're not going down without a fight." Down in the engine room, Chief Mechanic Tomas Hale wiped sweat from his bald pate, his massive frame hunched over the flickering power grid. Hale was the rock of the crew, brave to a fault, the kind who charged into hull breaches with a welding torch and a joke. "On it, Cap," he grunted into the intercom, diverting auxiliary flows. The ship shuddered as another volley grazed their flank, sparks erupting from a console near Voss. "Shields at 62%, Rao reported, his voice tight. "They're adapting, jamming our comms to the colonies." Elena's jaw clenched. The stakes were climbing. If the Krell boarded, they'd not only seize the data core but execute the crew as traitors. Earth couldn't afford to lose this proof. It was their only shot at rallying the fractured alliances among the fringe worlds. She tapped the tactical display, eyes narrowing on a dense gas pocket ahead. "Voss, take us into that cloud bank." Full burn. The Odyssey surged forward, engines flaring blue against the swirling purples and oranges of the nebula. The Krellians pursued, their ships more agile but less armored, firing blindly into the haze. One bolt clipped their rear stabilizer, and the deck tilted wildly, sending unsecured tools skittering across the bridge. "Stabilizers hit." Voss yelled, wrestling the controls. "We're losing altitude in the gravity well." Elena unstrapped and braced against the bulkhead, the acrid smell of burning circuits filling the air. This was no sim. One wrong move and they'd be vapor. "Hale, patch it, now." From engineering, Hale's voice boomed back, laced with grit. "Working on it, but if we push the engines harder we might cook the core." "Your call, Cap." She hesitated, the weight of command pressing down. The early plan to slip away quietly had backfired spectacularly. The nebula's interference was as much hindrance as help, turning their escape into a deadly game of cat and mouse. But surrender wasn't in her blood, nor her crew's. "Do it," she said. "We adapt or we die." As the ship dove deeper into the clouds, a new sensor ping lit the board. An anomaly, perhaps a derelict station or natural formation. Rao's eyes widened. "Captain, readings show something metallic. Could be a way out." Elena's pulse quickened. A gamble, but better than waiting for the Krell to close the noose. "Plot a course. Let's see what the nebula's hiding." The Odyssey plunged onward, the pursuing lights of the interceptors fading into the mist, but the damage was done. Their fuel reserves were dipping critically, and the data core's Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the faint hum of the Odyssey's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was dim, lit only by the glow of tactical displays and the holographic star map flickering in the center. Her crew, 3 souls she'd handpicked for this fringe mission, moved with practiced efficiency, but the air carried a weight that no amount of routine could lift. The Council's declaration had come through hours ago, a terse transmission severing the fragile alliance that had kept human expansion in check. Now, with their blockade fleets mobilizing, the Odyssey was the tip of humanity's spear, probing the outer rim for weaknesses. "Status on the sensor sweep, Lieutenant Reyes?" Elara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Reyes, ever the cautious one, hunched over his console, fingers dancing across the interface. His dark eyes narrowed behind wire-rimmed glasses, a relic from Earth that he swore improved his focus. "Clean so far, Captain. No signatures within a light year, but the nebula's interference is playing havoc with long range. If they're hiding a picket ship, it'll be like finding a needle in a cosmic haystack." He glanced up, his usual wit subdued by the stakes. The nebula ahead swirled with ionized gases, a purple haze that could mask ambushes or shield smuggling routes, depending on who you asked. Ensign Kira Novak, the ship's engineer and Ilara's right hand since the academy, leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. Her short-cropped hair was still smudged with grease from the last maintenance run, and her expression was all grit, no nonsense. We pushed through, we risked getting blindsided. But sitting here? That's just inviting them to glass us from afar. Your call, Cap. Ilara nodded, weighing the options. The plan had been simple. Slip into the nebula, map the Council's supply lines, and relay data back to the fleet. But the early probe drone they'd launched had vanished without a ping, likely fried by some anomaly or worse, jammed. Failure wasn't an option. Earth's colonies depended on this intel to reroute their convoys before the blockade tightened like a noose. Helm, take us in slow. Half impulse, evasive pattern delta. Reyes, keep pinging for that drone. Novak, prep the auxiliary shields, we're not getting caught flat-footed. The orders snapped out, crisp and unyielding. The Odyssey shuddered as it accelerated, the view screen filling with the nebula's ethereal glow, tendrils of plasma licking at the hull like curious fingers. As they delved deeper, the ship groaned under the strain. Alarms chirped softly at first, then insistent. Reyes swore under his breath. Captain, we've got interference spikes. Multiple sources. It's not natural. Looks like decoys? Deploying false echoes to scatter our sensors. Ilara's jaw tightened. The Council wasn't just blockading. They were toying with them, forcing a choice between blind navigation and retreat. Adapt the sweep algorithms. Cross-reference with stellar drift patterns. We came here to break their game, not play by their rules. Novak pushed off the wall, heading to her station. On it. Rerouting power to emitters. But if this backfires, we'll be drifting debris in 10 minutes. The tension coiled tighter, the bridge a pressure cooker of focused silence broken only by the ship's protests. Ilara stared at the map, her mind racing through contingencies. Humanity's edge had always been adaptability, cobbled together tech and sheer will against polished alien might. If they could just punch through this veil, the data would shift the balance. But one wrong turn, and the Odyssey would be the first casualty of a war Earth couldn't afford to lose. A sudden jolt rocked the ship, lights flickering as secondary systems strained. Incoming anomaly. Reyes shouted. It's a gravitic pulse, Council trap. Ilara braced herself. Evasive. All hands, battle stations. The nebula erupted into chaos around them, shadows coalescing into something far more sinister than gas clouds. The hunt had begun and they were the prey. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the faint hum of the ship's engines vibrating through her bones like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, the alien fleet's blockade a jagged silhouette against the nebula's swirling purples and blues. Her crew, small but sharp, waited in tense silence. Lieutenant Kai Ren, the wiry engineer with a perpetual squint, tapped furiously at his console, sweat beading on his forehead. Beside him, Dr. Mira Solis, the xenobiologist whose calm demeanor hid a mind like a steel trap, scanned the incoming data streams. We've got a window, Kai muttered, his voice low and edged with caution. Their sensors are blind to our frequency mods, but it'll last maybe 10 minutes before they adapt. He glanced at Ilara, his eyes pleading for the go-ahead without saying it outright. Ilara nodded once, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless. It meant calculating the odds and pushing anyway. Helm, plot the evasion course. Engage silent running. The ship shuddered as thrusters fired in precise bursts, slipping through the void like a shadow. Mira leaned forward, her fingers tracing the holographic display of the Council's dreadnoughts. They're not just blockading, she said softly, her tone laced with that analytical wit that cut through panic. Look at the energy signatures, they're prepping a reality warp. If we don't breach this line, Earth gets folded out of existence. The plan had been simple at the start. Infiltrate the Council's outer perimeter, plant the disruptor beacon to expose their alliance betrayal. But nothing stayed simple. Their initial probe had triggered a sensor net, forcing a hard pivot. Now, with the ship's cloaking field straining under the nebula's interference, Ilara felt the weight of it all. Kai's early hack had backfired spectacularly, alerting a patrol drone that now trailed them like a ghost. Drones closing, the navigator called out, voice cracking. Short, sharp breaths filled the bridge as alarms beeped warnings. Ilara stood, her boots magnetized to the deck. Divert power to countermeasures. Kai, can you spoof it? He shook his head, fingers flying. Trying, but their AI's learning too fast. One more pulse and we're lit up like a supernova. Myra's eyes narrowed, her mind racing through possibilities. She grabbed a tablet, sketching a quick schematic. What if we use the nebulous plasma currents? Route them through our exhaust vents, create a decoy flare. It'll cost us shields, but... Ilara met her gaze, seeing the risk mirrored there. Shields down meant vulnerability to the first stray shot. But the alternative was capture, and the council didn't take prisoners, they unraveled them. Do it, she ordered. Kai grumbled but complied, rerouting systems with a flurry of commands. The ship groaned as plasma surged, birthing a brilliant false signature that bloomed behind them. The drone veered, chasing the illusion into the nebula's heart. Relief washed over the bridge, but it was fleeting. Ilara's console lit up with a new alert. The blockade was tightening, dreadnoughts converging on their true position. They're adapting faster than we thought, Mira said, her voice steady but urgent. We need to hit that beacon site now, or the warp initiates in under an hour. Ilara clenched her fists, the earnest pull of duty warring with the grim reality. Her team wasn't superheroes. They were humans, gritty, improvising, unbreakable in the clutch. Full speed. Let's break their lines and remind them why they feared us. The ship surged forward, engines roaring defiance into the stars. But as the first enemy beams lanced out, grazing their hull, Ilara knew the cost was already climbing. One hit too many, and their ingenuity wouldn't save them from the void. Elena gripped the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared a staccato rhythm through the bridge. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer hull, showing the asteroid field's relentless churn, jagged rocks tumbling like drunken giants, one glancing blow away from shredding their fragile shields. Marco talked to me, she said, her voice steady but edged with the grit of someone who'd stared down worse than this. Marco hunched over his toolkit in the engineering bay below, sweat beading on his forehead under the harsh overhead lights. Wires snaked across the floor like exposed veins, and the hum of failing generators vibrated through his boots. Shields are at 23%, Captain. That last hit fried the auxiliary relays. I can reroute power from life support, but it'll buy us maybe 20 minutes before the air starts thinning. He wiped his brow with a grimy sleeve, his cautious nature screaming at him to double-check every splice, but time was a luxury they didn't have. The Council had cut them off, no resupply, no backup, leaving the Endeavor adrift in this godforsaken fringe system, hunted by the very pirates the Alliance was supposed to deter. On the bridge, Lieutenant Kira Voss paced, her wiry frame taut as a bowstring. The xenobiologist's sharp eyes darted between readouts, her wit usually a bomb in crises now turned to biting sarcasm. 20 minutes? That's optimistic. Those rocks are moving like they have a grudge. If we don't thread the needle to the nebula ahead, we're space dust. She slammed a fist on the armrest, not in panic, but in the raw frustration of betrayal, the Council's decree echoing in her mind, painting humans as unreliable aggressors after one botched negotiation. It stung, but Kira channeled it into action, plotting evasion vectors with frantic taps. Elena nodded, her brave resolve anchoring the team like gravity. Helm, adjust course to 247 Mark 12. Gentle thrusts only, don't want to draw more fire from those bastards trailing us. The pirates, opportunistic scavengers emboldened by the Alliance's fracture, had been nipping at their heels since the jump gate failed. No grand fleet, just ragged ships with railguns that punched holes in dreams. She glanced at the comms panel, silent as a grave. No hails from the Council, they'd broken the pact, leaving Earth's envoys to fend for themselves. Down in engineering, Marco's hands flew, splicing a jury-rigged conduit that sparked like fireworks. His mind raced through contingencies. Cautious by nature, he'd always preached redundancy, but the Endeavor's stores were barren after the embargo. Reroute complete, he grunted into the intercom, voice strained. Shields climbing to 41%. But, Captain, if we hit that nebula, the interference will blind our sensors. It's a gamble. Kira snorted over the open channel. Gamble? We're playing poker with our lives and the house is rigged. Those pirates won't follow into the soup, they hate unknowns more than we do. Her words carried the weight of their shared history, the three of them handpicked for this diplomatic run, now reduced to survivalists. Elena's leadership, Marco's fixes, Kira's insights, camaraderie forged in the fires of isolation. The ship shuddered as another asteroid clipped the edge, hull groaning in protest. Elena braced against the jolt, her mind flashing to the colony back on Epsilon Eridani, waiting for the data they'd carried. Failure here meant more than their deaths. It meant the Council's lies spread unchecked, humanity painted as the aggressors. "We're threading it," she declared, eyes locked on the swirling purple haze of the nebula ahead, a veil of ionized gas that could hide them or doom them. Marco, stand by for evasive. Kira, eyes on those scopes. Marco sealed the panel, the click echoing his resolve. Cautious, yes, but not frozen. Human grit meant adapting, bending rules the aliens deemed unbreakable. As the Endeavor nosed into the nebula's embrace, sensors wailing in protest, he allowed a grim smile. The Council thought they'd isolated Earth. Instead, they'd unleashed the ingenuity that built empires from scraps. Visibility dropped to zero, the bridge bathed in the ghostly glow of emergency lights. Kira leaned forward, whispering, "Into the unknown we go." The pirates' signatures faded behind, but the real test loomed. Navigating blind through a cosmic storm with failing systems and rising stakes. One wrong turn, and the Alliance's fracture would claim its first blood. Captain Elias Thorne gripped the railing of the observation deck, his knuckles white against the cold metal. The stars streaked past like fleeting thoughts, but his mind was fixed on the holographic display flickering before him. The Alliance fleet signatures blinked erratically, 3 cruisers had already peeled away from formation, their captains citing strategic reevaluation in terse comms bursts. Reevaluation. It was code for betrayal, plain as the void outside. Lyra Voss, the xenobiologist from New Terra, paced behind him, her tail twitching with agitation. "They're fracturing us from within," she muttered, her voice a low hiss that cut through the hum of the ship's engines. The Council's edict hit every relay at once. No more shared resources, no joint ops. "We're adrift, Elias." He didn't turn, eyes locked on the display. Brave as she was, always the first to volunteer for away teams, Lyra's caution showed in moments like this, when the unknowns piled up. "Adrift is better than dead," he replied, keeping his tone steady. Grit had carried humanity through worse, it would again. "We've got the prototype drive. If we can calibrate it without their tech support." A sharp alert pierced the air, red lights pulsing across the deck. Mira Chen, the engineer, burst through the hatch, her face smeared with grease and sweat. "Sir, the core's destabilizing. Those Council overrides we bypassed? They're feedback looping into our systems. If we don't vent the excess plasma in Tihi next 10 minutes, we'll cook from the inside." Elias spun, the weight of command settling heavier. Mira was the witty one, quick with a quip to lighten the load, but now her eyes held only urgency. The challenge wasn't just the Council's sabotage, it was the cascade failure it triggered in their own ship, the Endeavor. Resource shortage turned lethal. Power reserves dipping into the red, life support straining under the load. "Options?" he asked, already moving toward the engineering bay. Mira fell in step, Lyra close behind. "We could reroute through the auxiliary manifolds, but that'll fry the secondary shields. Or isolate the core and manual purge, but someone's got to suit up and crack the outer hull vents. Radiation levels are spiking." Lyra's ears flattened. "That's suicide. The suits won't hold against that flux." "Not if we jury-rig the field emitters," Mira shot back, a spark of her usual fire returning. "Human trick. Layer the ablative plating from the cargo hold. It's unorthodox, but it'll buy us time." Elias nodded, the plan forming in the rush of corridors. Earned triumph came from adaptation, not perfection. They reached the bay, alarms wailing as tech scrambled. He clapped Mira on the shoulder. "You lead the reroute. Lyra, suit up with me. We're not losing this ship to their games." As they sealed the airlock, the hull groaned under the building pressure. Outside, the void waited, indifferent. Elias felt the camaraderie solidify, The unspoken bond that had kept them pushing when the Alliance first courted Earth with promises of unity. Now broken, they forged their own path. The purge began with a shudder, plasma venting in brilliant arcs that lit the darkness. But as the Endeavor stabilized, a new signal pierced the comms, an Alliance interceptor's wing closing fast. The cost lingered, not just the scorched vents but the realization that isolation meant fighting alone. For now. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The view screen flickered with static, revealing glimpses of the fractured asteroid field ahead, jagged remnants of what the Vexery Council had once called a neutral buffer zone. Now it was a graveyard of debris, courtesy of their defensive reconfiguration, that had shattered the Alliance and turned the sector into a death trap. Her team had pushed through 7 jumps already, each one a gamble against failing shields and the Council's automated sentinels. But this leg felt different. Heavier. Shields at 40%, Marco muttered from the engineering station, his fingers dancing over holographic controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice carried that wry edge, like he was critiquing a bad meal rather than a potential hull breach. If we hit another grav mine, we're not dancing out of it. These rocks are singing with Vexery tech, resonating like a choir of pissed-off ghosts. She nodded, eyes locked on the scan readouts. Lyra, their reluctant Vexery defector, hovered in the corner, her iridescent scales shifting from uneasy blue to agitated violet. The alien's claws tapped rhythmically against her arm panel, a habit Elena had come to read as doubt. Lyra had joined them after the Council's betrayal, whispering secrets of backdoor codes and hidden lanes. But trust was a fragile thing out here, especially when your allies' people had just voted to isolate Earth and starve its colonies. We stick to the plan, Elena said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Thread the needle between the big clusters. Marco, reroute auxiliary power to forward deflectors. Lyra, feed me those evasion vectors, now. Lyra's eyes narrowed, multifaceted pupils reflecting the red emergency lights. The vectors are precise, human. But the Council anticipated deserters. They laced the field with adaptive drones. One wrong twitch and they swarm. Marco snorted, not looking up. Adaptive, huh? Like that time they adapted their fleet to our old missile patterns and we just spoofed them with decoys made from recycled soda cans? Come on, we've got this. The ship lurched as they entered the densest part of the field. Elena's stomach flipped. Short, punchy bursts of thrust propelled them forward, weaving through boulders the size of city blocks. A shadow passed overhead, a rogue fragment tumbling end over end, its surface pitted with Vexery etchings that glowed faintly like veins of malice. She yanked the yoke, the Odyssey groaning in protest as it banked hard left. Alarms spiked again. Incoming. Marco Gil. On the screen, 3 drones detached from a larger asteroid, their forms sleek and predatory, firing micropulses that lit up the void like fireflies with a grudge. Elena fired the countermeasures, flares and chaff blooming in their wake. 2 drones veered off, confused by the human trickery, but the third locked on, closing fast. Lyra jammed their signal. The Vexery hesitated, her claws freezing mid-tap. If I do, it traces back to me. The Council will know now. Elena snapped, her bravery flaring into command. No time for second thoughts. The drone's pulse scorched their shields, dropping them to 25%. Lyra's panels hummed, and she plunged her claws into the interface. A ripple of interference washed over the screen, the drone stuttering mid-flight before exploding in a silent bloom of plasma. But the victory was short-lived. The field responded, more drones awakening, a dozen now, converging like wolves on a scent. Marco cursed under his breath, slamming a fist on his console. Shields critical. We're blind in here, no clear exit for at least 2 minutes. Elena's mind raced. The original plan had been surgical. Slip through, hit the relay station on the far side, upload the virus that would expose the Council's fabricated war crimes to the neutral worlds. Human grit had carried them this far, cobbled repairs from scavenged parts, Marco's jury-rigged EMP bursts. But adaptation was key. Always. Lyra, she said, forcing calm into her tone, those etchings on the rocks, they're power conduits, right? Vexery style? The alien blinked, scales flickering to thoughtful green. Yes. They channel the field's residual energy to the sentinels. Why? Elena grinned, fierce and unyielding. Because we're not evading anymore. Marco, isolate a conduit signature. We're going to overload it, turn their trap against them. Marco's eyes lit up, his wit sharpening into focus. Hijack the choir? Hell yes. Give me 30 seconds. As the drones closed in, the Odyssey dove toward the nearest boulder, engine straining. Elena felt the weight of it all, the broken alliance, the colonies hanging by a thread, Lyra's fragile loyalty. One clever push and they could break through. But if it backfired, the void would claim them, a quiet consequence amid the stars. The ship shuddered, Marco's hack taking hold. The etchings on the approaching rock pulsed brighter, erratically, as if the field itself recoiled. Drones faltered, their formations breaking. Elena pulled up hard, the Odyssey surfing the resulting shockwave, a cascade of energy that cleared a path ahead. They burst free into open space, alarms quieting to a low hum. But as the relay station loomed on the horizon, scarred and waiting, Lyra's voice cut the tension. They felt that. Reinforcements will come. Faster now. Elena leaned back, exhaling. Earned, Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavour's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, the alien fleet's blockade a jagged silhouette against the nebula's swirling blues and purples. Her team, Jax, the wiry engineer with his perpetual squint, Mira, the sharp-tongued xenolinguist who'd once sweet-talked a pirate lord out of a skirmish, and Creve, the defected Voran scout whose scales still shimmered with unease, huddled around the tactical console. They jury-rigged the ship's shields hours ago, but the strain showed in the sparking panels and the acrid scent of overheated circuits. They're tightening the net, Jax muttered, his fingers dancing over the holographic display. Beads of sweat traced paths down his tattooed arms, the ink of old Earth Navy insignias blurring slightly. The Voran Armada, enforcers of the fractured council, had cut off their escape vector from the outer rim. One wrong move, and the Endeavour would be scrap, along with the prototype drive they'd stolen, the one that could rewrite faster than light travel on human terms. Ilara leaned forward, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Options, people. We can't punch through without turning to plasma. She'd always been the anchor, the one who weighed risks like a merchant balancing scales, but this felt heavier. The Council's betrayal had stranded colonies, starved outposts. Earth's grit was their only currency now. Mira crossed her arms, her dark eyes narrowing at the comms feed. Their chatter's ramping up. Something about anomalous signatures. If we spoof another distress beacon like on Zorath Prime, it might draw that frigate off position. Her words carried that familiar edge, witty but laced with caution born from too many close calls. Creve shifted, his clawed hands clenching. Risky. Vorans do not forgive decoys. They will hunt. His voice rasped like sand over metal, a remnant of his homeworld's storms. He joined them after the Council purged his clan for questioning the Alliance's end, loyalty earned in blood, not oaths. Jax snorted, wiping his brow. Hunt? Let him try. I've got the drive's quantum flux tuned. If we vent it just right, it'll mimic a warp rupture. Buy us a window. He patched in the schematics, lines of code scrolling like veins across the screen. The prototype wasn't just tech, it was humanity's middle finger to the stars, bending reality's rules with raw ingenuity. But tampering now could fry the core. Ilara nodded, decision crystallizing. Do it. Mira primed the beacon. Creve, eyes on their flanks. The ship groaned as Jax initiated the sequence, a low whine building in the engineering bay. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the nebula outside. The view screen erupted in alarms, red klaxons bathing the bridge in crimson. The frigate peeled away, lured by the false signal blooming like a supernova on their sensors. But the Voran lead cruiser didn't bite. Instead, it surged forward, weapons hot, a lance of plasma scorching past the Endeavour's hull. Alarms wailed, a bulkhead buckled somewhere below. Shields at 60%. Jax yelled, slamming overrides. Sparks flew from his console, singeing his sleeve. He cursed, yanking wires with bare hands, the scent of ozone sharp. Myra's fingers flew over the linguistics array, broadcasting garbled Voron dialect. Phrases twisted to imply internal sabotage. "Come on, you scaled bastards, take the bait." Creve monitored the rear scopes, his scales flattening in alarm. "Two more closing. They see the ruse." Ilara's mind raced, adrenaline sharpening her focus. The plan was backfiring, the flux vent drawing fire instead of diverting it. Abort the vent. Divert power to forward thrusters. We thread the nebula. It was madness. The gas clouds could blind sensors, shred unshielded ships. But staying meant capture, the drive dissected, Earth's edge lost. Jax hesitated, then complied, sweat stinging his eyes. Power rerouted. "Hold on, this is gonna rattle your teeth." The Endeavor lurched, engines screaming as it dove into the nebula's embrace. Colors warped around them, ethereal tendrils brushing the hull like ghostly fingers. The Voron cruiser fired blindly, shots glancing off ionized clouds. Inside, the ship shuddered, lights flickering, but they pushed deeper. Mira exhaled, gripping the console. "Sensors are haywire. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they recalibrate." Creve's eyes gleamed in the dim light. Humans, always the mad path. But there was respect in his tone, a crack in his caution. Ilara allowed a tight smile, the weight of command easing fractionally. They bought time, but the nebula hid more than enemies, unstable pockets that could ignite the whole mess. The drive hummed faintly behind the bulkhead, a promise and a peril. As the ship stabilized, she plotted their exit, knowing one slip would end it all. The Council's reality was cracking. Earth's would bend it further or break trying. Elena gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the debris field, sparks dancing across the viewport like fireflies in a storm. Marco's hands flew over the auxiliary controls, rerouting power from non-essentials. Life support flickered, but the engines hummed back to life. "We're blind here," he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "That Council cruiser just lit up our sensors like a Christmas tree. If they lock on, we're vapor." She nodded, eyes scanning the tactical display. The alien fleet encircled the outpost, their sleek vessels forming a noose around the human foothold on Zirian Prime. The Council had severed ties weeks ago, citing irreconcilable aggressions, but Elena knew better. It was fear. Earth's ragtag armada had turned the tide at Vega, jury-rigging antimatter drives from scrap that no xeno-engineer could replicate. Now, with supplies dwindling and the ground team's distress signal looping in her ears, retreat wasn't an option. "Patch me through to the surface," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Lyra's counting on us." Static crackled, then Lyra's voice broke through, laced with the gravelly timbre of her Vexery accent. "Reyes? That you? We've got Council troops breaching the outer dome. Your package better be worth the fireworks." Lyra was the wild card, a defected Council operative who joined them after the alliance shattered, her cautious nature a perfect foil to Elena's drive. But trust was thin, one wrong move and she'd bolt. "It's en route," Elena replied, watching the docking clamps engage with the outpost's battered bay. "The reality breaker," Marco's tweak on their phase tech. "It'll scramble their shields long enough for evac." The device was human ingenuity at its rawest. A portable disruptor cobbled from salvaged alien parts, designed to fold space around enemy hulls like origami gone wrong. No grand speeches, just a tool born of desperation. The shuttle lurched as they touched down, air hissing from the seals. Elena unstrapped, grabbing the reinforced case with the breaker inside. Marco followed, toolkit slung over his shoulder, his witty barbs silenced by the blare of alarms. They sprinted down the corridor, boots pounding against grated metal, past flickering holoscreens showing Council drop pods raining like meteors. Lyra met them at the central chamber, her iridescent scales dulled by grime, a plasma rifle cradled in her claws. "Took you long enough. Perimeter's holding, but not for long. Their commander, Voss, is pushing hard. Thinks he can reclaim this rock before your fleet reinforces." Her eyes narrowed at the case. "This better work. Last human miracle, nearly cooked my squad." Elena set the breaker on the ops table, flipping it open to reveal the glowing core, a fractal lattice pulsing with stolen energy. "It will." Marco, sync it to the outposts array. He nodded, fingers dancing over interfaces, bridging human code with Vexery protocols. Tension coiled in the air. Outside, explosions rocked the structure, sending dust sifting from the ceiling. As the device hummed to life, a new alert pierced the din, council boarders in the lower levels. "They're inside," Lyra growled, shouldering her weapon. "I'll hold them. You two get that thing online." She vanished into the shadows, her form blending with the dim light, leaving Elena and Marco to the final calibrations. Marco wiped his brow, voice low. "If this overloads, it could rip a hole straight through the planet's crust. We're betting everything on a hunch." Elena met his gaze, the weight of command settling heavier than the case. "Then make it count." The breaker word, interfaces aligning, and for a moment, the chamber fell silent save for the distant thunder of battle. Reality bent at their fingertips, ready to shatter the council's grip, or theirs. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The viewport showed the council fleet closing in, their sleek vessels like predatory shadows against the nebula's glow. "Status hail," she barked, her voice cutting through the din. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over the jury-rigged panel. "Shields at 20%. That last pulse from their disruptor fried half the emitters. We're blind on sensors too, it's like they anticipated every patch we threw at them." His usual wit had dulled to grim determination, eyes flicking to the readouts that painted their doom in red. Kira Voss leaned over the tactical display, her cautious nature pushing her to double-check every angle. "They're funneling us toward the singularity's edge. If we don't vector out in the next 2 minutes, the gravity well pulls us in. No escape pods will outrun that." She traced a finger along the holographic map, highlighting a narrow gap in their formation. "This is our shot, slingshot maneuver, but it'll tear the engines." Elena nodded, the weight of command settling heavier than the inertial dampeners failing around them. The Alliance's fracture had started with a single betrayal, the Council's embargo on human colonies, starving outposts of vital isotopes. Earth's response? A desperate prototype drive that bent spacetime in ways the aliens' physics deemed impossible. Now here they were, the last human ship in contested space, carrying the data that could shatter the Council's monopoly on warp tech. "Execute it," Elena said. "Hale, overclock the core. Voss, plot the burn." The deck shuddered as thrusters fired, the ship lurching into the gap. Laser fire grazed their hull, sparks erupting from a bulkhead. Marcus cursed under his breath, rerouting power from life support to biseconds. Air grew stale, but no one complained. The nebulous tendrils whipped past, a kaleidoscope of ionized gas that lit the bridge in fleeting purples and blues. Kira's hands trembled slightly on the controls, not fear but the precision of threading a needle through a storm. "Pulling up now. Hold on." G-forces slammed them into seats, the ship groaning like a living thing. Alarms peaked, then silenced as they cleared the fleet's net. But the victory tasted like ash. Scans showed the Council's lead cruiser damaged, venting plasma, yet their reinforcements were inbound. Worse, the prototype drive hummed erratically, its quantum matrix destabilizing from the strain. Elena unstrapped, moving to Marcus. "Can you stabilize it? We need that data packet to reach the relay buoy before they jam us." He shook his head, prying open an access panel with a toolkit scavenged from debris. "The Council's reality anchors are interfering, their tech enforces stable physics, but ours laughs at that. If I push it, we might punch a hole through their firewall, or through ours." A spark jumped, singeing his sleeve. He grinned faintly, the old spark returning. "Worth a shot, right? For the folks back home choking on ration packs." Kira monitored the buoy's approach, a distant beacon winking in the void. 2 light minutes out. But their interceptors are gaining. If we transmit now, they'll trace it straight to Earth. The decision hung, sharp as shrapnel. Elena's mind raced through contingencies, each more brutal than the last. Sacrifice the ship? Beam the data blind? No, the cost had been too high already, colonies lost, crews vaporized. This was about breaking their illusion of control, showing the galaxy that human grit didn't bend to edicts. "Initiate the breach," she ordered. Marcus slammed the panel shut, initiating the sequence. The drive whined, reality flickering at the edges, stars warping into impossible geometries. The Council's fleet hesitated, their sensors overwhelmed by the anomaly blooming from the human vessel. As the packet hurtled toward the buoy, Elena watched the interceptors close. One final adaptation, a decoy flare, laced with the drive's echo to draw fire. It worked. Explosions lit the darkness, buying precious seconds. But the backlash hit hard. The bridge consoles sparked, and Kira slumped, a shard from the ceiling grazing her temple. Elena caught her, pressing a med patch to the wound. "Stay with us, Voss." The ship stabilized, the transmission complete. Yet as the fleet regrouped, a new alert flashed. The Singularity's pull strengthening, the nebula's radiation spiking. Their escape window had narrowed to a razor. Marcus slumped back, exhausted but alive. "Data's out. Now what, Captain?" "We just became the biggest target in the sector." Elena straightened, eyes on the stars. "We run. And we show them what breaking really means." The engines roared back to life, propelling them into the unknown, the Council's reality fracturing in their wake. But the cost lingered, a wounded crew, a ship on the brink, and the galaxy forever changed. The chamber hummed with the low thrum of failing shields, the air thick with the scent of scorched circuits and alien incense. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the worn alloy, as the holographic display flickered before her. The Council's fleet loomed outside the viewport, sleek, predatory ships like shards of obsidian cutting through the void, but they weren't advancing. Not anymore. "Status on the quantum relay?" she barked, her voice steady despite the ache in her side from the earlier breach. Blood had crusted her uniform, but she ignored it, eyes locked on Lieutenant Kai Rin, who hunched over a makeshift terminal jury-rigged from salvaged parts. "Online, Cap," Kai replied, his fingers dancing across the keys with the precision of a surgeon. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his grin was fierce, the kind that said he'd stared down worse than this. "The virus is propagating. Their reality matrices are unraveling, literally. We're folding their simulations back on themselves." Dr. Mira Solon, the Xenotech specialist, leaned in from her station, her cautious nature showing in the way she double-checked every readout. "It's working, but it's unstable. If we push too hard, we could destabilize our own NAV systems. One wrong pulse, and we're adrift in the null zone." Ilara nodded, her mind racing through the fragments of the plan they'd cobbled together in the heat of desperation. The Council had severed the Alliance weeks ago, declaring humanity's primitive ingenuity a threat to galactic order. They'd blockaded Sol System, cut off trade, and sent enforcers to realign Earth's defenses. But humans didn't bend. They adapted. Kai's code, Myra's tweaks to the alien tech they'd scavenged, and Ilara's unyielding push had turned the tide. No grand speeches, just grit and gears. "Risk it," Ilara said, meeting Myra's gaze. "We've got one shot. Transmit the full cascade." Kai hit the key without hesitation. The ship shuddered as energy surged through the relays, a deep vibration that rattled loose panels and sent sparks dancing across the deck. Outside, the Council's armada began to warp, ships twisting like paper in a flame, their projected realities glitching into impossible geometries. A dreadnought folded in on itself, emerging as a blooming fractal of light before vanishing into a pinpoint of nothing. Alarms blared from the comms. "Incoming hail from the flagship," Mira announced, her voice tight. "Patch it through." Ilara straightened, projecting calm even as her heart pounded. The hologram shimmered to life, revealing High Arbiter Vexer, his multifaceted eyes wide with something akin to terror. His exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights of his bridge, but cracks spiderwebbed its surface, echoes of the chaos they'd unleashed. "Humans," he intoned, his voice a synthesized rasp, "cease this madness. Your disruption violates the Codex of Realms. We broke no alliance, we sought only to contain your chaos." Ilara's laugh was short, sharp. "Contain? You starved our colonies, bombarded our outposts. Words like alliance mean nothing when your fleets darken our skies." She leaned forward, her reflection fierce in the hollow field. "We're not asking for mercy. We're ending this. Pull back, or watch your empire glitch into oblivion." Vexor's mandibles clicked in agitation. Behind him, officers scrambled, their forms blurring at the edges as the virus ate through their augmented perceptions. "This is not victory," he hissed. "You shatter the weave of reality itself." "Reality?" Kai muttered under his breath, not quite low enough. "Yours maybe. Ours is built on what works." Mira shot him a warning glance but couldn't hide her own smirk. The team had argued fiercely earlier, Kai pushing for total overload, Mira advocating precision, Elara bridging the gap with quiet resolve. Now it paid off. The Arbiter's image flickered. "A truce," he conceded finally, the words tasting like defeat. "Withdraw your weapon. We will renegotiate terms. Earth remains sovereign." Elara held his gaze a beat longer, then nodded to Kai. The lieutenant dialed back the cascade, the hum in the chamber easing to a whisper. The fleet outside began to retreat, ships snapping back to their pristine forms but trailing wisps of distortion like smoke. As the hologram died, silence fell. Elara slumped against the console, the adrenaline crash hitting like a wave. "Damage report?" Mira scanned her readouts. "Shields at 23%. Hull integrity holding, but we'll need dry dock. And the relay, it's fried. No more jumps for weeks." Kai wiped his brow, slumping into his chair. "Worth it. They won't forget this." Elara looked out at the stars, Sol's distant glow a beacon through the debris field. The cost lingered, colonies scarred, crews lost, and now the galaxy would eye humanity with wary respect, not alliance. But they'd broken the blockade, rewritten the rules. Earth endured, not through might alone, but through the stubborn spark that turned desperation into dawn. In the quiet, Mira placed a hand on Elara's shoulder. "Homeward." "Yeah," Elara murmured, a tired smile breaking through. "Let's go home."